Just because we're family doesn't mean I'll let you ruin us, I whispered defeatedly into the dark as I recounted the money in my drawer. The dim glow of the bedside lamp cast eerie shadows across the room, but it was enough light to confirm my fears. There was a significant sum missing from my personal savings. My hands trembled as I sorted through the bills, the stark realization sinking in that this wasn't the first time. Over the past few months, I had noticed a gradual depletion, but I had brushed it off, convincing myself I must have miscounted or spent more than I thought. Now the evidence was undeniable. A creak in the hallway made me jump, and I hastily stuffed the money back into the drawer, my heart pounding in my ears. Evan shuffled into the room, his eyes heavy with fatigue and worry etched deep into the lines of his face. "You're still up?" he mumbled, sinking onto the edge of the bed. I swallowed hard, forcing a tight smile. Just couldn't sleep. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I couldn't bring myself to confront him. Not yet. Evan nodded absently, his mind clearly elsewhere. This was becoming increasingly common. The distant gaze, the preoccupied demeanor, the late nights out with flimsy excuses. Something was deeply wrong, and the missing money only added to my growing sense of dread. As he drifted off to sleep beside me, I lay awake, my mind racing with questions and doubts. Was Evan the one taking my money? If so, why? And how could I protect our family from whatever troubles he might be facing? The weight of the secrets hanging between us felt suffocating, and I knew I couldn't let this fester any longer. Tomorrow, I decided I would find a way to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Just because we're family doesn't mean I'll let him ruin us. The next morning, my hands shook as I placed the hidden camera in the living room, angling it discreetly towards the hallway leading to our bedroom. A pit of dread formed in my stomach, but I knew I had to catch Evan in the act. I couldn't let this torment of uncertainty continue. Later that day, as Evan left for his meeting, I hurried to check the footage. My heart sank as I watched him sneak into our bedroom and rummage through my drawer, stuffing handfuls of cash into his pockets. The betrayal felt like a physical blow, and I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. When Evan returned a few hours later, I was waiting for him in the living room, the damning video queued up on the laptop. "We need to talk," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained emotion. Evan paled as he took in the scene before him, his eyes darting between me and the computer screen. "Mara, I can explain." "Save it," I snapped, hitting play on the video. We watched in silence as the footage played out, the sickening reality of his theft unfolding before our eyes. When it ended, Evan slumped into the armchair, burying his face in his hands. "I'm so sorry," he mumbled, his words muffled by his palms. "I have a gambling problem. I owe people money, a lot of money." The confession hung heavy in the air, and a wave of nausea washed over me. All this time, while I had been working tirelessly to support our family, he had been squandering our hard-earned savings on his addiction. "How could you do this to us?" I demanded, my voice rising with each word. "To Lila? To your own mother?" Evan flinched at the mention of our daughter and his mother, who lived with us. "I never meant for it to go this far," he pleaded. "I thought I could win it back, pay off my debts." "You lied to me," I spat, disgust curling in my gut. "You looked me in the eye and lied, day after day." Evan nodded miserably, unable to meet my gaze. In that moment I saw him for what he truly was, a man consumed by his vices, willing to sacrifice everything for the thrill of the gamble. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to do next. "You need help, professional help," I stated firmly, "and until you get it, you're not going anywhere near our finances again." Evan's head snapped up, his eyes wide with panic. "But Mara, please, I'll get it under control, I swear." I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. "I can't trust you anymore, Evan. Not after this." I gestured to the laptop, the evidence of his deception laid bare. As I watched him crumble before me, a part of me ached for the man I had once loved. But the greater part, the part that longed to protect our family, our future, hardened with determination. I would do whatever it took to shield us from the wreckage of his addiction, even if it meant tearing our lives apart to rebuild them anew. In the days that followed, Evan seemed to be making an effort. He started attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings and agreed to hand over control of our finances to me. I kept a close eye on our bank statements, desperate to believe that he was finally on the path to recovery. But deep down, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was still off. Little things kept catching my eye. The way Evan would tense up whenever I mentioned money, the furtive glances he would cast around the room as if afraid someone was watching. One evening, as I was going through our mail, a letter from the bank caught my attention. It was a statement for a credit card account I didn't recognize. Frowning, I tore it open, my heart sinking as I scanned the charges, thousands of dollars in cash advances and gambling-related expenses. I confronted Evan as soon as he walked through the door, thrusting the statement in his face. "Care to explain this?" He blanched, stumbling back a step. "Mara, I can explain." "Save it," I spat, fury bubbling up inside me. "You promised you were getting help. You said you were done with this addiction." Evan ran a shaky hand through his hair, his eyes darting around the room. "I am getting help, I swear. It's just harder than I thought." "Harder?" I echoed incredulously. "You've been lying to me this whole time, stealing from us again." Evan opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off, too angry to listen to his excuses. "How can I ever trust you again? You've betrayed us, betrayed our family." As the words left my lips, I saw Eleanor hovering in the doorway, her face etched with concern. "What's going on?" she asked cautiously. I turned to her, the statement crumpled in my fist. "Your son has been gambling again, racking up debt behind our backs." Eleanor's gaze shifted to Evan, a flicker of something like recognition passing over her features. "I knew it," she murmured, shaking her head sadly. "I saw the signs back when he was a kid, the lies, the sneaking around. It all makes sense now." Evan flinched as if she had struck him, his face flushing with shame. "You mean you suspected something like this before?" I demanded, whirling back to face Eleanor. She nodded solemnly. "I caught him stealing from me a few times when he was a teenager. Small amounts, but it set off alarm bells. I tried to confront him about it, but he always denied everything." Evan dropped his gaze to the floor, his shoulders slumped in defeat. As the weight of Eleanor's revelation settled over us, I felt a surge of determination rise within me. If this was a pattern, a cycle that had been going on for years, then I knew what I had to do. "Enough is enough," I declared, my voice steely with resolve. "We're not going to enable this anymore, Evan. You need to get serious help, or—" I trailed off, letting the unspoken threat hang in the air. Evan lifted his head, his eyes haunted with the realization that this time there might be consequences he couldn't gamble his way out of. After the confrontation with Evan and the revelations from Eleanor, I felt like I was living in a waking nightmare. The man I had vowed to love and cherish had been lying to me, stealing from our family to feed his insatiable addiction. In the days that followed, I kept a close eye on our finances, determined to uncover the full extent of Evan's deception. As I pored over bank statements and credit card bills, a sickening pattern began to emerge. Cash advances, wire transfers, even loans taken out against our home without my knowledge. My hands trembled as I printed out the damning evidence, the numbers swimming before my eyes. How could he have done this to us? How could he have risked everything we had worked so hard for? When Evan returned home that evening, I was waiting for him in the living room, the stack of papers laid out on the coffee table, like a twisted monument to his betrayal. "Care to explain this?" I asked, my voice deathly calm. Evan froze in the doorway, his eyes widening as he took in the scene before him. "Mara, He trailed off, his gaze dropping to the floor. "You what, Evan?" I prodded, anger simmering beneath the surface. "You thought you could keep lying to me? Keep stealing from our family?" He flinched but remained silent, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I demanded, gesturing to the documents. "You've taken out loans against our home, put us in debt up to our eyeballs. All for what? Another roll of the dice." Evan lifted his head, his eyes pleading. "I wanted to protect us from bankruptcy," he mumbled, his words ringing hollow. I let out a mirthless laugh, shaking my head in disbelief. "Protect us? By gambling away our future, our security? How can you possibly justify this?" Evan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He knew there was no justification, no excuse that could undo the damage he had caused. "You've betrayed us, Evan," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You've betrayed our family, our trust. How can I ever believe a word you say again?" He hung his head, shame etched into every line of his face. In that moment, I saw him for what he truly was. A man consumed by his vices, willing to sacrifice everything for the thrill of the gamble. As I stared at the crumpled figure before me, I knew that things could never be the same between us. The man I had loved was lost, perhaps forever, to the grip of his addiction. But even as my heart shattered, a steely resolve took root within me. I would not let his selfish actions destroy our family. I would fight with every fiber of my being to protect what was left, our daughter, our home, our future. And if Evan couldn't find the strength to conquer his demons, then I would have no choice but to cut him loose, once and for all. In the weeks that followed my discovery of Evan's deception, a palpable tension settled over our household. Evan had promised to seek professional help and attend regular Gamblers Anonymous meetings, but I found it increasingly difficult to trust his words. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, Eleanor approached me in the kitchen, her expression grave. "Mara, we need to talk," she said, her voice low. A knot of dread formed in the pit of my stomach as I set down the knife I had been using to chop vegetables. "What is it?" Eleanor glanced over her shoulder, as if afraid of being overheard. "It's about Evan," she continued. "I saw him yesterday at the casino downtown." The air seemed to leave my lungs in a rush, and I gripped the edge of the counter for support. "You're sure?" I managed to choke out. Eleanor nodded solemnly. "I was running errands in that area and spotted him through the window. He was sitting at a poker table, playing like he didn't have a care in the world." White-hot fury surged through me, mingling with a sickening sense of betrayal. After everything he had put us through, after all his promises to get help, he was still gambling, still lying to our faces. "That lying son of a—" I began, but Eleanor held up a hand, cutting me off. "I know, believe me, I know," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disappointment. "But we can't let him continue down this path. Not anymore." I took a deep, shuddering breath, willing myself to remain calm. "What do you suggest?" Eleanor's expression hardened, a steely determination settling over her features. "We need to take action," she stated, "for Lila's sake, if nothing else." My heart clenched at the mention of our daughter, who remained blissfully unaware of the turmoil her father's addiction had caused. I couldn't bear the thought of her finding out the truth, of her world being shattered by Evan's selfish choices. "You're right," I agreed, my voice steady despite the maelstrom of emotions raging within me. "We can't let him drag us down any further." Together, Eleanor and I began to formulate a plan, a way to confront Evan with the evidence of his deceit and force him to face the consequences of his actions. As we discussed our options, a sense of grim resolve settled over me. Evan had made his choices, time and time again, choosing his addiction over his family. Now, it was our turn to choose, to fight for our future, even if it meant cutting him loose once and for all. As I looked at Eleanor, her eyes burning with a protective fierceness, I knew we were united in our determination. We would do whatever it took to protect our family, to secure our financial stability, and to ensure that Lila's future wasn't gambled away by her father's vices. Evan had betrayed us for the last time. Now he would face the consequences of his actions, no matter how painful they might be. The day of reckoning arrived sooner than I had anticipated. Eleanor and I had gathered irrefutable evidence of Evan's continued gambling, photographs of him at the casino, bank statements showing unexplained cash withdrawals, even receipts from seedy establishments known for hosting underground poker games. As Evan strode through the front door that evening, whistling a cheerful tune, I felt a surge of white-hot anger coursing through my veins. How dare he act so carefree, so oblivious to the turmoil he had inflicted upon our family? "Evan, we need to talk," I stated, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. He froze, his brow furrowing as he registered the steely expressions on Eleanor's and my faces. "What's going on?" he asked, a note of trepidation creeping into his tone. Without a word, I strode over to the coffee table and snatched up the stack of evidence, thrusting it towards him. "Care to explain this?" Evan's eyes widened as he took in the damning photographs and documents, his face draining of color. "Mara, I can explain," he stammered, but the words rang hollow, even to my own ears. "Save it," I spat, my patience utterly depleted. "We know you've been lying to us, Evan. We know you've been gambling again, squandering our hard-earned money on your addiction." Evan flinched as if I had struck him, his gaze darting between Eleanor and me, panic etched into every line of his face. "How could you do this to us?" I demanded, tears of rage and betrayal stinging my eyes. "To Lila? After everything we've been through, after all your promises to get help?" Evan opened his mouth, but no words came out. For once it seemed his silver tongue had failed him. "You've put us in debt, Evan," Eleanor chimed in, her voice laced with disappointment. "You've risked our home, our financial security, all for the thrill of the gamble." Evan shook his head vehemently, his eyes pleading. No, you don't understand. I had it under control. I was going to win it all back." A bitter laugh escaped my lips, disbelief mingling with disgust. "Win it back? Evan, wake up! You've been spiraling deeper and deeper into this addiction, lying to us every step of the way." He flinched again, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "How could you gamble with our daughter's future like this?" I pressed on, my voice thick with emotion. "How could you put your own selfish desires above the well-being of our family?" Tears spilled down Evan's cheeks, but I felt no pity, only a bone-deep weariness. I was tired of the lies, the excuses, the broken promises. "We've given you chance after chance, Evan," Eleanor said, her tone gentler than mine but no less resolute. "But you've squandered every opportunity, every second chance we've offered." Evan shook his head weakly, but we both knew the truth. He had dug himself into a hole so deep, there was no easy way out. As I stared at the crumpled, broken figure before me, I felt a strange sense of clarity wash over me. This was the moment, the pivotal point, where everything had to change. "It's time to face the consequences of your actions, Evan," I stated, my voice steadier than I had expected. "No more lies, no more excuses. This ends now." He lifted his head, his eyes swimming with desperation, but I had already made my decision. I would no longer enable his self-destructive behavior, no matter how much it hurt. This was the only way to save our family, and if Evan couldn't see that, then he would have to learn the hard way. The weight of our confrontation hung heavy in the air, the silence thick and suffocating. Evan stood before us, shoulders slumped, his eyes red-rimmed and pleading. "Please," he croaked, his voice cracking with emotion. "Give me one more chance. I swear, I'll get help. I'll turn things around." I felt a flicker of pity stir within me, but it was quickly extinguished by the memory of his lies, his betrayal. How many times had we heard those same empty promises before? "Your chances ran out a long time ago, Evan," I stated, my voice hard and unyielding. "We've given you more opportunities than you deserved, and you squandered every single one." Evan flinched as if I had struck him, his gaze dropping to the floor in shame. "This has to stop, son," Eleanor chimed in, her tone tinged with sadness. "We can't keep enabling your addiction, not when it's destroying our family." "But I need help," Evan pleaded, desperation lacing his words. "I can't do this alone." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "You should have thought of that before you gambled away our savings, our trust, our future." Evan opened his mouth, but I held up a hand, cutting him off. "Enough," I said firmly. "We're done with the lies, the excuses. It's time to face the consequences of your actions." Fear flickered in Evan's eyes, and he took a step back as if recoiling from a physical blow. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice little more than a whisper. I steeled myself, drawing in a deep breath. "You have two choices, Evan. Either you get professional help, real help, and relinquish all control over our finances, or—" I let the unspoken threat hang in the air, letting the weight of it sink in. Evan's eyes widened, darting between Eleanor and me. "Or what?" "Or we expose you," Eleanor stated bluntly. "We take everything we know, the evidence, the documents, the pictures, and we make sure everyone knows the truth about your addiction." A strangled sound escaped Evan's throat, a mixture of fear and disbelief. "Your job, your reputation, your relationships, they'll all be at risk," I continued, my voice unwavering, "not to mention the legal consequences of the loans and debts you've racked up." Evan shook his head vehemently, his face pale. "You can't. You wouldn't." "Try us," I challenged, my gaze steely. "We're done watching you gamble away our future, Evan. It's time to take back control." A heavy silence fell over the room, the weight of my ultimatum pressing down on us all. Evan's eyes darted between Eleanor and me, searching for a glimmer of mercy, a flicker of hesitation. But there was none to be found. We had both reached our breaking point. our love and loyalty stretched to the limit by his selfish actions. "This is your last chance, Evan," I said, my voice softer but no less resolute. "Choose wisely." Evan swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. For a long, agonizing moment, he remained silent, the gravity of his decision hanging in the balance. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he gave a slow, defeated nod. "Okay," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I'll do it. I'll get help." As the words left his lips, I felt a surge of relief mixed with trepidation. This was the first step, the first glimmer of hope that we might be able to salvage what was left of our family. But deep down, I knew the road ahead would be long and treacherous, paved with temptation and the ever-present threat of relapse. Evan's addiction had taken root deep within him, and it would take every ounce of strength and determination we possessed to uproot it. Yet as I looked at Eleanor, her eyes shining with a mixture of sadness and resolve, I knew we were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together as a family, no matter the cost. In the weeks that followed Evan's agreement to seek help, a fragile sense of hope began to take root within me. He enrolled in an intensive outpatient program and attended regular Gamblers Anonymous meetings, his demeanor subdued and contrite. Yet, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the lingering doubts that gnawed at the back of my mind. Evan's addiction had taken such a firm hold, consuming him so completely. Could he truly break free from its clutches? My suspicions were confirmed one fateful evening when I received a call from an unknown number. Frowning, I answered, only to be met with the gruff voice of a man I didn't recognize. "Is this Mara Lewis?" he asked, his tone laced with barely concealed hostility. "Yes, who is this?" I replied, my heart rate quickening with a sense of foreboding. "This is Tony Russo," the man stated, his words clipped and accusatory. "I own the poker room down on Maple Street." My blood ran cold as realization dawned. This was one of the seedy establishments where Evan had been known to frequent, feeding his addiction with high-stakes games. "I don't know what kind of game your husband is playing," Tony continued, his voice lowering to a threatening growl, "but he better pay up and fast." A wave of nausea washed over me as the implications of his words sank in. Evan had been gambling again, racking up debts with dangerous individuals. "How much does he owe you?" I managed to choke out, my throat constricting with a potent mixture of fear and anger. Tony rattled off a staggering figure, one that made my head spin with its sheer enormity. "Look, lady," he snarled, "I don't care how you get the money, just make sure your husband settles his tab. Otherwise, there might be consequences neither of you want to face." The line went dead, leaving me trembling in the suffocating silence of our living room. Betrayal and disappointment surged through me, bitter and all-consuming. How could Evan have done this after everything we had been through? After all his promises, his vows to change? As the minutes ticked by, the anger within me solidified into a steely resolve. I could no longer stand idly by, enabling Evan's self-destructive behavior. It was time to take drastic action, no matter how painful it might be. When Evan finally stumbled through the door hours later, his eyes bloodshot and his clothes disheveled, I was waiting for him, the damning evidence in hand. "Care to explain this?" I demanded, thrusting Tony's number and the record of his debts into Evan's trembling hands. His face drained of color, and he opened his mouth, but I cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Save it," I spat, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "I'm done with your lies, your excuses. You've betrayed us for the last time, Evan." Evan shook his head vehemently, his eyes pleading. "Mara, please, I can fix this. Just give me another chance." But his words fell on deaf ears. I had heard that same refrain too many times before, each promise hollower than the last. "You had your chance," I stated, my voice steely and unwavering, "and you blew it just like you've blown every other opportunity we've given you." Evan crumpled before me, his shoulders shaking with sobs, but I felt no pity, only a bone-deep wariness and a grim determination to protect what was left of our family. "Pack your things," I ordered, my heart hardening against his pleas. "You're leaving tonight." As the weight of my words settled over him, Evan lifted his head, his eyes shining with unshed tears and a dawning realization. This time there would be no second chances, no mercy. He had gambled away his last shot at redemption, and now he would have to face the consequences of his actions, alone.